The Day the Earth Stood Still is the film that made an alien visitor terrifying without ever showing a monster, a Cold War warning wrapped inside a flying saucer. But this movie is hiding a lot more than you remember. Did you know one clue may reveal where Klaatu really came from? Or that the original story revealed Gort was the real master all along? Today, we're uncovering 13 hidden truths about The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, including how this classic almost got an official sequel 30 years later. Number 1. Where Klaatu and Gort really came from. Throughout the film, Klaatu reveals a surprising amount about his civilization. He explains their advanced medicine, their system of planetary law, and even the terrifying authority given to robots like Gort. Yet he remains strangely careful about one basic detail. He never names the planet that sent them to Earth. So where did Klaatu and Gort actually come from? If we believe the newspapers seen throughout the film, the answer seems obvious. Their headlines call Klaatu the man from Mars, suggesting that the public has already decided he must be a Martian. But is that actually true? The film never confirms it directly. However, several clues suggest that those newspapers may have accidentally guessed correctly. The first and strongest clue is the distance. Klaatu says he traveled approximately 250 million miles to reach Earth. That is remarkably close to the maximum distance between Earth and Mars when the two planets are on opposite sides of the Sun. The second clue is Klaatu's appearance. His skeleton and internal organs are almost identical to ours, while even Gort was constructed in a humanoid form. This could suggest that Klaatu evolved relatively close to Earth, perhaps somewhere inside our solar system, and that his people created Gort in their own image. Then there is Klaatu's age. He is 78 years old and says his people normally live to around 130. Scientists believe Earth and Mars formed at roughly the same time, so a Martian lifespan of around 130 seems believable for a civilization that evolved slightly ahead of humanity. Finally, Klaatu calls his people our neighbors and reveals that they have monitored Earth's radio broadcasts for years. Combined with the distance he traveled, that sounds less like a civilization from another galaxy and more like one watching us from a nearby planet. None of this proves that Klaatu was a Martian. But if the filmmakers wanted viewers to suspect Mars without ever saying it directly, they left more than enough clues. Perhaps the newspapers were not spreading another wild rumor. Perhaps they revealed the answer before anyone realized it. Number 2. Gort was the real master. From the moment Gort emerges from the spaceship, he appears to have one purpose: protect Klaatu. He destroys the weapons aimed at him, follows several of his commands, and later saves his life. Because of this, we naturally assume that Gort is Klaatu's companion or servant, while Klaatu is the one in charge. But the film never actually says that Gort works for Klaatu personally. This ambiguity has led viewers and film analysts to wonder whether their relationship might be the exact opposite. Could Gort actually be the master? The first clue is how little authority Klaatu ultimately has over him. Klaatu explains that robots like Gort were given absolute power over every inhabited planet and automatically acted against any aggressor. Klaatu can give Gort instructions, but his control is clearly not unlimited. The clearest sign is Klaatu's warning that, if he dies, Gort might act on his own and even destroy the Earth, making Klaatu Barata Nikto sound less like a master's command and more like an emergency failsafe. Second, the strongest evidence comes from the 1940 short story that inspired the film Harry Bates's Farewell to the Master. In that version, the robot is named Gnut. Klaatu is killed almost immediately after arriving on Earth, and Gnut spends the story trying to recreate him from a recording of his voice. A human reporter assumes that Klaatu must be Gnut's master and asks the robot to deliver a message to him. Newt then corrects him with the story's final revelation: "You misunderstand. I am the master." The movie removed that explicit twist and renamed Newt as Gort, but perhaps it did not erase the idea completely. Gort may appear to serve Klaatu, yet he holds the greater power and controls whether Klaatu lives or dies. Perhaps the real master was standing beside Klaatu the entire time. Number 4. The Christmas sequel Bradbury never got made. In 1981, 30 years after the original, 20th Century Fox decided the film deserved a sequel, and hired one of the most celebrated names in the genre to write it. Ray Bradbury, author of Fahrenheit 451 and The Martian Chronicles, delivered his first draft on March 11, 1981, under the title The Day the Earth Stood Still 2, the evening of the second day. His premise was bleak. Klaatu is dead, his body preserved in ice aboard the ship, and his daughter Klaatu comes to Earth in his place to judge what humanity has done with the warning. She lands at Cape Canaveral on Christmas Eve and meets a NASA engineer named Chris Atkins, who becomes the story's human lead. What she discovers is that humanity has learned almost nothing from Klaatu's visit. Most of the people who heard his warning are already dead. Many others now believe the entire event was a hoax, and the world is still dangerously close to nuclear war. Bradbury submitted a revised version on September 11, 1981, this time adding ideas inspired by Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. But Fox disliked the new version and decided not to move forward with the sequel. Written during a new rise in Cold War nuclear tensions, Bradbury's sequel was far more pessimistic than the original. Instead of suggesting that humanity might learn from Klaatu's warning, it showed that 30 years later, we had learned almost nothing. Number 5. The claim that the CIA was involved. There is a long-running theory that this film was not entirely a Hollywood production. The claim is that the CIA secretly inspired or assisted it as an Acclamation experiment, a controlled test of how the public would react to news of real extraterrestrial contact. The main source is filmmaker Linda Moulton Howe, who said in 2008 that she had been told by U.S. Air Force intelligence officers back in the 1980s that the movie was one of the first government tests of public reaction to such an event. Supporters of the theory point to several real connections that they believe support the idea. Screenwriter Edmund North was a former major in the U.S. Army Signal Corps. Producer Julian Blaustein was also a Signal Corps veteran, and a memo from studio head Daryl Zanuck, dated August 10, 1950, insisted that every effort be made to make the audience completely accept the story as something that could actually happen in the near future. Do you think there's anything to the Acclamation idea, or is this just people connecting dots that were never connected? Number 6. What Klaatu Barata Nikto really means. When Klaatu gives Helen the phrase, he urgently warns her that if he dies, Gort could unleash something capable of destroying the planet. Then he is killed. Gort tears out of confinement, and the robot's visor opens on Helen. She says Klaatu Barata Nikto, and his behavior changes on the spot. He does not kill her. He carries her into the ship, goes back out for Klaatu's body, and then operates the machinery that restores him. The screenplay itself notes that the words visibly affect him. No literal translation was ever supplied, in the film or afterward, and the people connected to the production never agreed on one. Years later, people tried to work out what the phrase might mean from Gort's reaction, and one interpretation was essentially, Klaatu is dead, bring him back, and do not retaliate. That interpretation fits what happens on screen, but it was created long after the film and was never an official translation. What can be established is what the phrase does. It works like an emergency authorization that halts an automatic retaliation and redirects the machine toward recovery. Which means Klaatu flew to Earth already knowing his own death could trigger a catastrophe, and he handed the abort code to a secretary from Washington rather than to any government on the planet. What does that tell you about what Klaatu really thought of our leaders? Number 7. The detail that makes the ending darker. After Klaatu is shot dead, Gort carries his body back to the saucer, uses the ship's machinery to restore him, and Klaatu walks out to deliver his final speech to the assembled scientists before flying away. Watched casually, it plays like a standard science fiction resurrection, the hero brought back and sent home. But there is a line most people miss. Klaatu explicitly tells Helen that the technology can only re-stimulate life for a limited period, and when she asks how long, he says nobody knows. The screenplay makes the meaning even clearer. It says Helen is saddened because she realizes Klaatu's return to life is only temporary, and that eventually he is going to die again. That limitation exists because of a fight behind the scenes. Accounts of the film's production code review say the Breen office, the industry censorship body, objected to a machine permanently raising the dead. on the grounds that resurrection is a power belonging to God. North, producer Julian Blostein and director Robert Wise still needed Klaatu alive to give the final speech, so they kept the revival but made it temporary, and added Klaatu's line crediting the Almighty Spirit as the final authority over life and death. That changes the tone of the ending completely. Number 8. The story Fox rewrote from the ground up. Harry Bates' 1940 short story Farewell to the Master, published in the pulp magazine Astounding Science Fiction, is not really the movie you have seen. In the story, the alien Klaatu is killed early, and not by a nervous soldier, but by a religious fanatic. The narrative then follows a photojournalist who keeps returning to study the robot, called Gnut, and the ending delivers the reveal that the robot was the master all along. Screenwriter Edmund North kept the names, the saucer, and the robot, and throughout the architecture. He promoted Klaatu to protagonist, turned him into a calm emissary, delivering a warning about where atomic weapons were heading, and demoted the robot to bodyguard and enforcer. The original mystery about who actually held the power simply stopped existing. That single decision determines what the film means. What audiences got in 1951 was a Christ-like visitor bringing a message to a species that kills him for it. What Bates wrote was something colder, a story where the impressive humanoid turns out to be disposable, and the real intelligence was standing silently in the background the entire time while humans assumed flesh must outrank metal. Number 9. The rock musical that opens with this film. The Rocky Horror Picture Show arrived in 1975 as a midnight movie musical, and it opens with a song called Science Fiction Double Feature, a loving roll call of the 1950s B-pictures its creators grew up on. The very first name the song reaches for is Michael Rennie, the English actor who plays Klaatu, and the film's own title is folded straight into the opening line. That placement matters more than it sounds. Rocky Horror became the most watched midnight movie in history, played weekly for decades to audiences who sang every word, and this film is the first thing they sing about. Which means a lot of people who have never sat through the 1951 original still know the title by heart, because a rock musical put it in the first 10 seconds of the show. Number 10. The president who repeated Klaatu's warning. Klaatu's entire argument rests on one idea: that if humanity faced a common threat from outside Earth, countries would stop fighting each other and unite against it. That idea did not stay in the movie theater. On at least 3 documented occasions, President Ronald Reagan said something remarkably close to it. At his first face-to-face meeting with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in Geneva in 1985, Reagan said he was confident Americans and Soviets would cooperate if they were threatened by aliens from outer space. He repeated it to a group of high school students in Maryland shortly afterward. Then, in his 1987 address to the United Nations General Assembly, he told the world's assembled governments that he sometimes thought about how quickly the planet's differences would vanish if we all faced a threat from outside this world. Historians have connected this directly to the film. Robert Brent Toplin documented that Reagan was deeply impressed by the movie's ideas about war and peace, and Reagan had also belonged to the United World Federalists, a peace group active in the same period. Whether Reagan was consciously quoting a 1951 science fiction film, or just drawing from the same well of Cold War anxiety, is still argued. What's your take? Was Reagan channeling this movie, or did the movie and the president just share the same fear? Number 11. The army that refused to show up. The film needs a military presence almost from the first reel. Tanks, jeeps, artillery, and soldiers ring the saucer for most of the running time, and the army's twitchy, trigger-happy response is the whole point of the story. So 20th Century Fox did what studios always did, which was ask the US Department of Defense to lend the hardware and the men. The Pentagon read the script and said no. The objection was the film's anti-militaristic stance, which paints the armed forces as paranoid and quick to shoot a visitor who arrives with his hands empty. Without official cooperation, there was no army equipment and no army personnel, and the production faced shooting a film about a military standoff with nothing to stand off with. The solution was to go around the Pentagon to a separate chain of command. The filmmakers approached the Virginia National Guard, which by all accounts was happy to help, and supplied the vehicles and the manpower. The result is a small piece of history: the US Military read this script, understood its pacifist message perfectly, and formally refused to help a major studio because of it, and then the Guard rolled its equipment onto the set of the very film the Pentagon had rejected. Number 12. The star who kept laughing at her lines. Patricia Neal plays Helen Benson, the widowed secretary, who delivers those 3 words and ends up saving the planet. She had no idea she was making a classic. In interviews, and later in her autobiography, Neal admitted she assumed the whole thing was just another one of the trashy flying saucer pictures crowding theaters at the time. And she struggled to say her dialogue with a straight face. Her co-star Michael Rennie, who plays Klaatu, would stand there and watch her bite her lips to keep from giggling, then ask her, with what she described as true British reserve, "Is that the way you intend to play it?" Rennie even turned the famous alien phrase into a private joke. At the time, reporters were constantly questioning Neal about her affair with the older, married Gary Cooper. So Rennie suggested that the next time they cornered her, she should simply stand tall, look completely serious, and answer, "Klaatu Barata Nikto." Years later, Neal's opinion of the movie had completely changed. In her autobiography, she called it the best science fiction film ever made, even though she admitted she could barely keep herself from laughing while filming it. Number 13. The worst possible year to release this film. The Day the Earth Stood Still premiered on September 18, 1951, at an unusually tense moment in American history. American troops were fighting in the Korean War. Senator Joseph McCarthy was running the Red Scare, hunting suspected communists in government and entertainment. The Hollywood blacklist had also expanded dramatically. What began with the famous Hollywood 10 eventually grew to include hundreds of actors, writers, and filmmakers whose studios refused to hire because they were suspected of communist ties. And the country was in the middle of a UFO panic that had been building since the Roswell incident 4 years earlier. Into all of that, 20th Century Fox released a film arguing that nations should cooperate, that the military response to the unknown was the wrong one, and that the alien was the reasonable one in the room. It ran against anti-Soviet feeling and anti-alien feeling at the same time. The message was noticed immediately. The Golden Globes gave the film an award for Best Film Promoting International Understanding, an actual category at the time. The Academy Awards gave it nothing at all, not a single nomination, and while science fiction was already a disrespected genre, the politics almost certainly did not help. Do you think a studio would greenlight this exact script today? Or is 1951 still braver than we are? For a film made in 1951, The Day the Earth Stood Still feels uncomfortably current. Its biggest question was never whether aliens exist, but whether humans can control themselves once they have the power to destroy each other. So if Klaatu returned tomorrow, what do you think his verdict would be? I want to hear your answer, and if you enjoyed this one, leave a like and subscribe for more forgotten secrets from classic cinema.